Welcome to All Things Moore County, Moore County's weekly radio show highlighting the many facets of the Sandhills. That includes real estate, lifestyle, community and neighborhoods. And now from 4 Properties, here's your host, Bill Sahadi.
Good morning and welcome to the talk show, All Things Moore County. And Dorothy, I hope you can hear me okay.
I can.
Okay, I don't know how I'm modulating very well, but hey, we had a good time last week.
We did. There was a lot of energy in the room.
Talking with the Pinecrest Theater Players Department.
Mm-hmm.
And their show, Addams Family, opened last evening.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm actually going to go to the show on Sunday, the matinee. And it was refreshing to have a couple of high school guys in the room.
Yes, it was. We have so many girls around here.
You always give me a hard time.
I do.
You always say, how come you have all these girls that come in?
I know. There are always girls in here. I'm beginning to wonder.
Well,
don't the boys around here do anything?
Well, I have a young man with me today that's going to dispel your that myth.
Oh, good.
Because we love getting the students in who are proactive,
mm-hmm.
who are directed and focused, and who are growing up the right way and not afraid. I mean, they have the courage of their convictions. And we had 3 guys on last week, so I was getting warmed up for our guest today. And we actually have 2 guests today. We're going to be speaking with Taft Gantt in the first set.
Mm-hmm.
And in the middle of the show, we're going to be speaking with Pinecrest Patriot football coach Chris Metzger,
mm-hmm.
who's been a past guest on the show.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to be talking about mentoring, coaching, not sports per se, but what can be instilled in athletes.
Mm-hmm.
Just like last week with the Addams family, what can be instilled in actors. The thing that all these kids have in common is their courage of their convictions. And it's great to have your courage of your convictions at such a young age. Taft is 16 years old. He is a 10th grader. He's in his 2nd year at the Woodberry Forest School in Virginia. He's an athlete. He is a very thoughtful, very bright, very good-looking kid who is very involved in the school's a school-run network at the school where he broadcasts and does blogs and writes. And I've had the privilege of knowing his family for all his life, his sisters and his mom and his dad. And Taft went to, well, first of all, I'm going to just say good morning. And before I start to just go off on a rampage here, how are you?
I'm good. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, you're on spring break right now.
Yes, 2-week spring break. So
2 weeks?
Yes, so I've had a nice relaxing time to catch back up on sleep and see all my friends, family.
Yeah. You went to O'Neill, I guess, through the 8th grade?
Yes. Well, I first went to West Pine, and then I switched halfway through middle school.
Okay.
I loved West Pine, and then I switched to O'Neill and spent my last 2 years there.
Okay. And you have a passion of sorts, no different than some of the cast members who were here last week for the Addams family. And you are pretty directed for a 16-year-old.
Well, I try to be. I try to stay focused.
Tell us about your passions.
Well, first of all, I love to play tennis. I played since I was about 10 years old.
Yeah.
I play out at CCNC with a lot of my friends, like the Landrys, Sam Henry. We have ball out at clinics in the evenings. And also, what I love to do is watch sports, just everything sports. I'm a huge fan of. So whether it's on TV, reading about it, I just love to keep up with the local teams and just what's going on.
Yeah, we were comparing notes before we started to tape the show today, and another person we have in common is Mia Bobrowski. She was a tennis teacher at CCNC.
Yes, I loved Mia. She was actually my first teacher at CCNC. She got me into the game, taught me how to hold the racket, how to do the basics.
So my dad used to tell me when I was in high school, I would just say, I just want to play sports. And he would say, well, and what else? That's it? You're going to just play sports? Is that what you're going to do for your life? And I said, well, I just this is what's important to me. But you're not just playing sports, you're getting involved in sports as a vocation, as a tell us a little more detail about how involved you are and what you're doing with it.
Yeah, so at Woodberry, in the fall I played football. I was on the JV football team there. I played defensive back. I'd actually never played before last year. I played flag football growing up here in the Sandhills.
Yeah.
So I decided I'd give tackle football, high school football a try, and I loved it, had a lot of fun. And then in the winter, I went on to try another new sport, which was wrestling. So I wrestled for my second year this year. It was a lot of fun. It was good to try something new. And then I did tennis in the spring. But also at Woodberry, we have a network, like you mentioned. It's called WFSPN, which is pretty much where we talk about, or we commentate or do radio or live stream for sporting events there. So football games, basketball games, baseball, you name it. We try and call as many sports as possible. So currently I'm the vice chairman of WFSPN. So I get a say in everything that goes on, what we spend our budget on, what new equipment we get, or just what we do, what games we call. And I also get to do the lower level games, whether it's JV football or JV basketball, freshman football. So I have a lot of fun doing that with all the people at school.
So your interest is not just in sports, but it's in the business of sport.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
My ultimate dream would be to be on ESPN,
Right.
commentating the Super Bowl.
Okay. Well, we're going to maybe give you a shot to do that today. We have a lot of different events to talk about, but I kind of respect the fact that at 16 years old you have so much direction. Plus, you're exceptionally well spoken. I mean, you enunciate beautifully. You speak like a broadcaster. You know that?
Yeah, well, I try. I try to get my voice out.
So, after high school, you're going to go to college. What do you want to major in?
I want to major in communications and journalism.
Okay.
So I'm looking for schools that have a good communications program.
Right.
Where I can go to school. Right now on my list would be Georgia. University of Georgia has a great program. Northwestern up in Chicago. UNC Chapel Hill has another great communications program.
Hey, Dorothy, do you know how much Taft and I have in common? When I was a junior in high school, my high school guidance counselor had to call me in and say, Bill, are you going to go to college? I shrugged my shoulders. I don't know, maybe,
Yes.
And she put a couple of college catalogs in front of me, and I picked one because I liked the picture on the cover of the book, and it had a pull-out application. And that's where I went my first year.
I believe it.
So do you see how similar Taft and I are?
Yeah, sure.
He just blows me away. You have, so Taft, you have way more direction than a lot of kids your age. No different than the actresses and actors that were here. No different than some of the student athletes that we've had on the show. Where do you get that? Where do you get that focus? Where did it come from?
Well, first of all, I take after my parents.
You sure do.
They work hard. My dad's a financial advisor. My mom is a mortgage broker. So just growing up watching them just go to work every day and stay on task, but also know how to have fun in the evenings after work. So it's just, I've just grown up watching them and seeing how they'd work.
So I can vouch for everything you just said. Your family, you have a family of overachievers, Carlin and Courtney, your mom and your dad, very resilient, right? And they keep moving forward and very proactive. And so you've grown up in an environment that inspires that, doesn't it?
Yes, definitely. Carlin and Courtney have definitely encouraged me and challenged me to do better than they have, whether it's playing a board game or just having a fun conversation over the dinner table.
So are you competitive with your siblings, or are they just 100% supportive and vice versa?
Well, initially it was definitely competitive, and it still is in a way, but since they've gone on, graduated from college, my older sister Courtney went to NC State, and Carlin, who's my parents' middle child, went to UNC Charlotte. So now that they've moved out of the house and I don't see them as much, it's kind of turned to more of a supportive tone. So I'll chat over the phone with them. They'll see it. We'll check in with each other.
Right.
So now it's more or less competition
Yeah.
and more of like supportiveness.
So do you believe in the adage that if you surround yourself with good people, right, that it will make you better, as opposed to being the big fish in the pond with people, beneath you a little bit?
Yes, definitely. I mean, being surrounded by successful people and people who are achieving a lot of things in their life kind of encourages you to make you say, okay, I want to be successful like they are, and if I'm not, I'd almost be not a disappointment, but kind of let everyone else down. So you want to live up to everyone else's expectations and kind of be successful because you see how well their life is since they worked so hard.
Yeah, that's how you start, and eventually you start doing it for yourself, not for others, because you have your own goals. When you were talking about your dream would be to work for ESPN one day, so when I went to college, and I told you about this kid who was a year behind me, his name was Tom Ojakian, and he was pretty focused. Well, he became one of the heads of ESPN in the 80s when ESPN was sort of in their infancy, and people said, how can you have a 24-hour channel all about sports? Well, we look back today, and ESPN in your life was always there, right? How could you not have a channel with 24 hours of
Exactly.
sports?
I mean, now they have like 4 channels: ESPN2,
Right.
ESPN News, ESPNU.
So in your broadcasting and in your writing, do you have a favorite sport that you like calling or playing in or observing?
Well, it's got to be basketball or football. I mean, 2 most exciting sports in my opinion. There's nothing better than turning on the TV on a Saturday morning and watching College Game Day, watch Reese Davis and the whole crew talk about either football or basketball right before a big game.
Okay.
And then turning on TV that night and watching the game. It's just relaxing and a great time to just watch the sports.
So you sound like you're a student of games as well as just a fan. Okay.
Yeah, when I'm watching, like for instance, when I'm watching the basketball tournament that's going on right now,
we're going to talk about that.
I'll be listening to Jay Billis and the play-by-play person just call the game and imagining what I would say in comparison to what they're saying.
All right, I have a question for you. Tell me about what is the magic about college basketball versus the pro game? Why is the NCAA tournament such an important part of our conscience? What's the difference between the college game and the pro game, in your opinion?
Yeah, well, in college, it's just a bunch of boys who are still growing up, still learning the ways of basketball, and they're just going all out on the court 110%. They're not playing for money. They're not playing to go and have a drink after, like in the NBA. And in college, they're just giving it all on the line because they know that they have to play for not only themselves but their teammates, and it's more of a team game opposed to individuals like it is in the pros.
More human drama, more emotion?
Yes, definitely. They've laying it all out on the court each night, especially in an NCAA tournament when they know that it's win or go home. This could be their last ever college basketball game.
Okay. So, Dorothy, the NCAA tournaments start this week, and there's a song that Taft, when I mentioned it to him, he smiled. He knew the song. I want to play it because right after we play it a little bit, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the local teams and just to give us your overview of what you think is going to be happening. It's called One Shining Moment.
You're running for your life. You're a shooting star in all the years. No one knows just how hard you worked. But now it shows.
Fisher Davis right to the court. No good. And Northwestern has won.
Wisconsin, they have knocked out the defending national champions.
The 2-seed Duke Blue Devils are out.
The time is short.
Okay, we're back. That song inspires a lot of people, and it's sort of become the trademark for the tournament over all these years. You have a lot of interest in some of the local North Carolina teams. You want to talk a little bit about them? They have a couple of games coming up this week, and by the time the show airs, we're going to know the results of that first round. So don't worry if you make a wrong prediction.
Okay, well, but all of the local teams have actually had very successful seasons. North Carolina, Duke, NC State, they've all lived up to expectations and exceeded that, especially for teams like NC State, who had a new coach in Kevin Keats.
Right.
They were expected to finish 12th in the ACC. They ended up being the 5 seed in the ACC tournament and got over 20 wins this season. So they got themselves a 9 seed in the NCAA tournament, and they'll be facing Seton Hall.
Tough team, Big
yes.
East.
I mean, they've already played,
Big East, tough team.
our listeners are listening. So hopefully NC State fared out well in that game. If I had to make my prediction, I would say that they would end up pulling it out because they got knocked out earlier in the ACC tournament to Boston College. They have a lot of rest going into the game and a lot to prove to the nation to show that they're not just a one-hit wonder and they don't know how to perform in the postseason.
That was not unlike Jim Valvano's team in 1983,
No.
right?
Well, this team could be like that in the NCAA tournament. I mean,
They could beat anybody.
Jimmy V's team in '83 was a low seed, and they ended up making a run and winning the national championship.
Beating Houston, I believe, right?
Yes.
That was I watched that with my dad, and I watched Jim Valvano run across the court, and like a little kid. And that's what's so great about college and even high school sports. The emotion is so raw, it's so real. You were talking about the pro game, and it's a little bit more removed, right? It's more like a business.
Exactly. They're
Right.
playing for themselves, not
Right.
for the team.
How do you think Duke and NC will make out?
Yeah, well, they also had great seasons. UNC earned themselves a 2 seed, and they actually had a great ACC tournament. They lost to Virginia in the finals.
Mm-hmm.
They play Lipscomb first, and then their bracket is pretty well. They're in the South region, I believe. No, they're in the.
Are they in the Midwest?
No, not the Midwest. They're in the East, I think.
Okay.
I'm not exactly sure.
Okay.
But they have a pretty good bracket. They could definitely make a run to the Final Four or even all the way to the championship like they did last year. But they'll have a lot to live up to considering they won the national championship last year, and it's always hard playing as the defending national champions. But they're in their bracket. Their 1 seed is Xavier, and I think that's a team that they can definitely beat. But their first competition is going to be Providence, which will be Saturday.
They're a tough physical team.
Yeah, Providence. Ed Cooley, their coach, he's a great coach, and Providence did an exceptionally well job in the Big East tournament. They ended up making it to the finals.
They almost beat Nova.
So they have a lot of momentum going into that game. So that'll be a great game being played in Charlotte on Sunday.
Right. So it's an exciting time, and you're going to be all over it.
Yes.
So in the summers, what are you going to be trying to do? Are you going to be trying to get internships, different places for, your resume for experience?
Yes, definitely. So, I mean, just getting experience like it is talking to you now.
Right.
It's just whatever I can.
I'm getting
trying to
experience
do.
talking to you. You're helping me.
So I'll try and get some internships coming up. Not this summer, but next summer. I'm going to try and do something, whether it's football media day for the ACC, or the SEC or ACC tournament, seeing if I can just find a job that I can just do for free and just get that experience and just because I would love to just be on the court and be able to do what I'm interested in.
What are your major strengths? What do you bring to the table? Because if somebody's going to listen to this podcast and they're going to listen to this and maybe consider hiring you for an internship, what do they need to know about you?
Well, I love what I want to do. I love sports, like I said earlier, so just talking about sports is just pretty much a dream. I mean, I can't imagine going and getting paid to go to a sporting event and talking about it. I mean, that's what I want to do. So just that love and passion for sports is...
What about your work ethic?
Definitely, I'm a hard worker. I strive for excellence, and I want to be the best, so I don't want to be on ESPN2. I want to be on ESPN. I want to be always the top dog in whatever I do.
When you speak, you speak, and I hear the excellence, and people will judge you about how you speak, how you write, right? And how much pride you take in yourself. And as you speak like a top of the heap. I mean, I don't think you can go any higher at 16 years old. And I hope people hear that if they, because once we have this podcast, you can take it and do with it as you want. Yeah. So you have a lot. You're looking forward to going back to school. You'll get involved in the baseball season too.
Yes, I'm going to try and call some baseball games, which is actually a lot of fun because since it's less going on the field, it's more to talk about, kind of like me and you are doing right now, and you can talk about whatever you want.
Exactly. Well, I want you to stick around with us in the next part of the show because we're going to be speaking with a gentleman you know, Chris Metzger, who is the coach of the Pinecrest Patriots, who has been with us for 11 or 12 years, who has made a difference on a lot of students. And I'm glad he could come in and actually hear you and see you speak. So stay with us and take part in our conversation.
Definitely.
We want to thank Taft Gantt for coming in. We wish you the best of luck at school.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to be
it's
here.
good to see you again. And you come from, that apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And I see both your parents in you, and you have $1 million smile.
Yeah, well, actually, last night my mom went into my baby book and pulled out a card.
Mm-hmm.
It had a little teddy bear on the front, and inside it was a note that you wrote to me when I was a baby. It
When
said,
you were born.
"Dear Taft, welcome to the world," and it went on to...
Pam sent that to me last night. It was so cute. I remember it very well. And
Well, I didn't. I was about...
Well, how could you not remember? You were only like 10 hours old.
Well, I think I was asleep when you wrote it.
Well, it just, the circles are small and relationships last over time. And to see you here as a 16-year-old and to remember back when I wrote that to your mom, wow, how quickly time goes by. Taft Gantt, it was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you so much.
We're going to be back in the second set, and we're going to be speaking with Chris Metzger for the balance of the show. He's been a past guest on the show and always a very interesting guy to catch up with. This is All Things Moore County.
That young lady's going to be on the internet all night. She's smiling.
Monk to tie it. Oh, an impossible shot. Made for the win. North Carolina featured against.
Welcome back to the second set of All Things Moore County. Hey, Dorothy,
Yes.
do you think I could ever speak as well as Taft? He is.
I don't know. I think you got a lot of hours of practice.
He is impressive, is he not?
Yes, he is.
16 years old. Goodness. If I closed my eyes, I thought I would be talking to a real old soul. He really, I remember when I was 16, unfortunately, and I was nowhere near, not even in his league. Taft is still with us, and he's going to join us. We're actually being joined by Chris Metzger, who is starting his 12th season as the head coach of the Pinecrest Patriots. And Chris, as you walked in and Taft and I were speaking before, it didn't occur to me that you guys knew each other. How did you know Taft?
Taft used to go to our camps, our football camps, our Christmas camps, and they're really good friends with the Birds, big state fans, and Coach Bird's been with us 10 years. So developed a relationship with them, and at a young age you could see he had a lot of charisma, a lot of heart, and a lot of focus.
Yeah.
Pretty driven young man. And so it was good. It's good to see him. And I didn't see him, but I saw his parents last year, 2 seasons ago when we played up at Woodberry Forest. So it's good to see him.
So tell that story. Pinecrest played Woodberry, the school, Taft, that you go to. You were at that game, I'm sure.
Yes.
Okay. And you were telling the story that you guys were big underdogs going in there, and why? Was it a bigger school?
Well, what it was, I met their coach at a NFL Character Summit years ago, and we were looking for a game. And their old coach, and he said, well, we're just a small boarding school. I met him. We made a kind of a gentleman's agreement. And going into the season, once we did some research, they were nationally ranked. So the first year we played them was the year Sean Pollard, who's at Clemson, Christian Ledbetter. We had a really good team. They came in, and we were underdogs, not as big of underdogs, and ended up being a great football game. We won 54-46.
Wow.
Over 1,000 yards of offense. And
Wow.
so what a great game. Well, then we had to play him the next year after graduating 36 seniors. And we went up there, and I'll never forget it. We played there. Our school system did a great job. Dr. Crimsey, Mr. Christine was first class. We went up the night before. It was like a college trip. And we went out there and were warming up, and they boasted 13 Division I players. Now, they only had 35 players in their program. And what was interesting was that it was about 110 degrees that day. And Coach Alexander, who's a friend, I said, Coach, you sure we should play? We have no heat rules. Well, we were probably, and this in coach talk, probably about 28, 35-point underdog. But we were pretty deep because all their best players, they had 10 kids going both ways. And they were Division I kids, great players. And long story short, it just became a game where we outlasted them. And in 26 years of coaching, definitely a top 5 success story for our young men. I mean, kids were crying after the game because our players knew. They looked at the other side when we were warming up and saw Division I quarterback, Division I tight end, Division I. I mean, it was just Division I players everywhere.
Right.
And it was really a great success story for our kids. One that, if you ask them to this day, some of their greatest memories of being a Patriot, they're going to talk about, our team camp where we go out in the woods and bond. They're going to talk about going to App State team camp, and then they're going to talk about that game.
Well, I think it was good timing when you walked in because you got to see Taft. He and I were just talking, and he kept focused. But as a coach for 12 years or going into your 12th year, you've got to get a lot of pleasure out of seeing kids that are directed, kids that are focused, kids that have that eye of the tiger, so to speak, as opposed to the ones who don't.
No doubt about it. Listening to Taft, one of the things that immediately got me is obviously I knew him.
Yeah.
Great eye contact in the way he speaks, but then how involved in multiple sports he is, because when you and I were growing up, you played everything.
Yeah.
You were playing it in the streets, you played it at school.
Right.
And now, when you could go to any NFL, MLB, or NBA coach, player, official, and they would tell you kids got to be involved in multiple sports. And we can have article upon article upon article upon scientific study, medical study that states it, but yet we still are in this rut where people are at the age of 9 and 10. People are saying, "Well, my child's only going to do this, because he won't make it to the big leagues with that." And it does my heart well to hear Taft talk about.
Right.
He's involved in tons of activities,
Right.
and he understands that's going to make him well-rounded. Because when he goes to ESPN, if he's only done baseball, they're going to say, "Well, you can only commentate baseball," but now he's going to be able to commentate football, basketball, baseball. He'll learn about soccer. He plays golf. I know he's a golfer too.
Right.
So he'll be well-rounded.
Right. And focused on the business of sports in addition to just on the joy of sports. But you probably look back over your 11 years, 11 seasons, and you've got to be like a proud father. Some of your offspring, some of the kids that spent 3 or 4 years under your tutelage and training. And it isn't just about football, is it?
It's about creating champions in a game of life. I mean, you
Right.
look at it, Sean Pollard gets a lot of notoriety because he started a national championship game.
Right.
Sean Pollard gets a lot more notoriety because he raised, over $50,000 for childhood cancer. Him and a bunch of his old linemen and some of the coaches. Coach Sweeney didn't do it, shaved their heads for childhood cancer, and they let the cancer patients do it. That's a champion in the game of life. You're taking Nick Lacey, one of the biggest success stories on ESPN a few summers ago. I mean, I cried when they rewarded him with a scholarship. I mean, Coach Dorn even broke down. Well, Nick and some of his teammates go to an orphanage in Africa every year for spring break and give their time. And he'll tell you, he made some big plays this year on special teams in the Carolina victory and other victories and the Louisville victory. But he talks about, the greatest victory is his relationship with the undefeated head coach and going to that orphanage, much more than senior day and other things. You look at a Spencer Bishop. When we got here, he had been the starting quarterback the year before. He's an others before self guy, became our tight end, went to Wake Forest, started there, had a couple cups of coffee in the NFL, and now he works for NASCAR. He works for Coach Gibbs' organization.
Wow.
Where he
Joe
talks about
Gibbs.
they start out every day. He's a pick guy. He starts every day with a little Bible study and then works out and then practices.
Right.
So there's a lot of success stories. Bryce Kennedy's working for Deloitte Touche in Raleigh. Was an academic All-American at NC State. His playing career didn't quite work out. He started some. But, he'll talk about, and he'll come and talk to our guys, the work ethic he learned, going to camps and playing multiple sports.
Right.
And then going to NC State and focusing on that student athlete.
Yeah. I look back, I remember, because the NCAAs are upon us, and Syracuse, got in as the last team. and Jim Boeheim. And Taft, you might not know this, but Jim Boeheim was the second guard on the 60-something team, and his the point guard on that team was Dave Bing, right? So Jim Boeheim was, not a star on the team, but there's nobody today that's more affiliated with Syracuse University than Jim Boeheim. As a coach, all his whole life, he is Syracuse, and he was just I guess a second guard on the team. Dave Bing was a very well-known NBA player. So whether it's in participating or whether it's just getting in the business of sports, you never know, where you're going to go. Right? Heady stuff, huh?
Yeah, well, Jim Boeheim's now one of the greatest coaches in college basketball.
He's an icon.
And considering he was playing the game and winning a national championship in the 60s is just remarkable.
Yeah, and here we are in 2018, and he's still going strong. It's kind of crazy. Chris, the way you develop students is no different than what the Taylor Dance Company does with their dancers who we've had on the show. It's no different than what Adam Faw is doing at the drama department, right? And we were talking, Taft, earlier about Callie McIntyre, who you knew, and you've already predicted success for her, right? So I'm going to just tell her to take it easy because you've already written her future.
Well, we went to elementary school together.
You went to elementary school with Callie?
Yes, and we still keep in touch over social media.
Okay.
And I know she's going to do a great job, and whether it's acting or being a model or whatever she decides to do.
Right.
I know that play that's coming up, the Addams Family, that you talked to them.
Are you going to go?
Last week. I'm going to try to go, definitely.
Yeah.
Because I know that it's going to be a very successful play out of all the work they've put into it.
Well, these kids in athletics, it's no different than everything else, and we love highlighting good students, the students that are out there on the tips of their toes, on the balls of their feet, right? You've got a couple of things going on in 2018 going forward that I know you want to talk about in helping prepare your student athletes for a well-rounded experience, don't you?
No doubt about it. Every high school athlete in the country is going to lift, run, work out, practice their craft. But we focus on the little things. And I say we because I'm very blessed to have a phenomenal coaching staff around me. You kind of like you bring in people that are better than you. And it's always that others before self. And we've got a great administration. Coach Hood, our AD, does a great job. But what we focus on every spring is our rising seniors. They go and mentor to the elementary and primary kids. And the interesting part about it is they don't come up and say, how many catches did you have last year? Mm-hmm. They just know that young man plays for Pinecrest High School, and the kids look up to him. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing the success stories from the past 11 years where teachers and principals from these elementary and primary schools say, little Chris Metzger was having trouble. And ever since those student athletes started coming, he's more focused, because the teachers say, hey, they're going to see you on Friday. We want to give them a good report. And the kids understand the role they have on a Friday night where they're so fortunate to be in a place that really is supportive, where you're going to have thousands of people there watching and, just in a school that understands the balance. You mentioned Adam Fall. I was in drama in high school and college, and we have a lot of guys involved in multiple, not just sports, but multiple activities because they understand what it means to be well-rounded.
Yeah. Interesting. We're going to come back in the third set, and actually, Taft, I'm going to ask you to ask Coach Metzger a couple of questions. I think I'm confident you can do it, and I'm just going to let you take the lead a little bit for the first couple of minutes. What do you say?
Awesome. Sounds great.
You good?
Yes.
Chris, you're good?
Be awesome.
All right. We're going to be back in a few minutes. This is All Things Moore County. Welcome back to our final set of All Things Moore County. We have the pleasure of speaking with Chris Metzger, the Pinecrest Patriot head coach of football, but way more than that, a shaper of kids, and building heart and building, grit and preparing student athletes for success in life, whether they're in athletics or not. And we have a great example of a young man here who's not on the Pinecrest football team, but who goes to Woodberry. But Taft, you know Coach Metzger, and you have a broadcast career or an interest in front of you, and it doesn't make sense that I should be talking to Chris alone, and perhaps you can take the mic and start a conversation with him, listening to what we were talking about. Better you than me, huh?
Yeah, well, I'd love to.
It's all yours.
Thank you. So, it's a pleasure to even be in the room with Chris Metzger. I mean, growing up, born and raised in Pinehurst, Pinecrest has always had a great football program that you've pretty much built out of dirt and excelled it to a great program that it is now. But I know that you don't only focus on the field, also off the field in life. I know that you guys are reading a book, you're giving cliff notes and kind of points of interest to your players on not just the game of football, but also the game of life. What can you tell us about that book?
Well, first of all, thank you. I get way too much credit for what's happened. There's been some unbelievable people blessed us along the way. Mr. Sahadi's one of those guardian angels that have helped us, give kids the opportunity, and that's what it's all about, an opportunity to grow as young men. And this year, every year, our staff does a book study. We've read multiple different books that have really helped us, and we try to help us as men, as husbands, as fathers, as human beings, as servant leaders in our community. This year we're reading a book by John Gordon called Winning in the Locker Room First. It really should be called Winning in the Game of Life First, because that's what it's all about. And what we do as a staff is we take a chapter a week, and then in turn with our team we spend 2 weeks on a chapter. And it's really about the 7 C's to success in life. We talk about culture. Culture's a buzzword right now. What's your culture over at 4 Properties? What's the culture at Woodberry Forest? What's the culture in our locker room? Does that culture resonate in our lives? We talked a lot about being consistent. There's a whole chapter about how can we be consistent in everything we do. You can be positively consistent or the other way. Mm-hmm. And we talk about how we're going to be positively consistent. How contagious. There's a lot of things that are contagious. It's flu season, but is our energy contagious? Is our work ethic contagious? Is our character contagious? There's a chapter on communication. Today, I've got phones, and there's a lot of teenagers that they don't talk a lot because they don't have to.
That's right.
So we talk a lot about communication. It's very important to us that if you went up to our guys and said, what are the little things? How many times in a week do you hear about the little things? Because in life, it's the little things. Uh-huh. It's not the big things. Everybody's going to do the big things. It's the little things. So we feel like this book, taking those cliff notes, and we communicate with the guys. I don't read it to them. Coach Murchison doesn't read it to them. The guys read it, and then once they read it, we say, okay, so you just read that, Bill, about connecting. Well, what do we do to connect? Mm-hmm. How are we connecting as brothers? And then what can we do to connect on a deeper level? Yeah. So that's kind of an overview of it, and it's a great book, and it's benefiting the entire program, which you talk about the coaching staff, and hopefully it's benefiting them and the branches on the tree and with who they work with and the students they teach, not just the players at home. And then you talk about the players, and it's important for them to understand that it's a privilege to be involved in high school.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, having those common goals and common points in life that you try and achieve can really build that chemistry that you have on the football team, and that chemistry can really drive you to success both on the field and off. So I'm sure that having that bond in the locker room and on the field can really create some great opportunities for the players in games and in practice.
Without that, you just said something that was really, really critical as a young head coach, at the time just a secular head coach. Win. We got to lift, we got to run, we got to lift, we got to run. And as I moved here and was blessed to meet some of these guys, guys like Mr. Sahadi and his success, guys like the military guys, how are you able to achieve what you achieve? Mm-hmm. And there's a common theme. You got to love one another. You got to serve others, love and serve others. You can't, I heard someone say you can't get a title until you pick up the towel. Yeah. And so to speak, kind of wash your people's feet, so to speak, not meaning that in just a biblical sense, but in a sense of showing servant leadership. And that's a big thing with our guys. I mean, we've got our 4 pillars: love, effort, focus, and trust. But, we talk to our guys all the time about, being appreciative, gratitude. And we as a coaching staff, we don't say the word win. Now, do we want to win? Yes. I mean, if right now Mr. Shahadi and I we're going to have a contest to see who could get the door first, I want to win. But we don't talk about winning in that sense. We talk about how are we going to be successful. Okay, why is it important that you have good eye contact? Why is it important you sit in front of the class? Why is it important you have manners? Why is it important that you have a firm handshake? You remember the eyes ready, 2 claps when you were a little kid coming to our camps. Yeah. Why is eye contact important? What does that do? So people know you respect them. People know you're confident, not cocky. People know that you're passionate. And those are the things that really, right. Would we love for Greg to run a 4.40 or a quarterback? Sure. But nobody's going to care what his 40-yard dash time was when he becomes an adult. Right. It's those attributes. Once again, we don't mind if he runs 4.4. We'll take it.
He has Taft has unbelievable eye contact, doesn't he?
Yes, he does.
I mean, that's crazy.
Great parents. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. Great parents, and you learn that at a young age.
Yeah.
Raise a child in a way, and they'll never depart from it, no doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm sure that in the huddle or in the locker room on the football field, you can really emphasize those points to the team, and then once you have those really life goals, they can really come together and build that love for each other, and that's really all that matters on the football field. I mean, you can go win the state championship, and that's a huge accomplishment, but at the end of the day, if you don't love one another, then what have you really accomplished?
No doubt about it. So, it's some things you just mentioned are unbelievable. It's all about those relationships. I heard a guy that's won a bunch of Super Bowls, and I'm not going to mention his name. He's won a bunch of Super Bowls. He's considered the greatest ever, and he's got a beautiful wife, and he's got great kids. And he said, but something's missing. Now, I don't want to go deep into that, but when you look at that, we tell our goals all the time. If we go 15-0 with a bunch of guys that aren't champions in a game of life, we've cheated you.
Right.
We've cheated. Now, we wouldn't mind that. We wouldn't mind playing in December. We've made it Thanksgiving. We wouldn't mind playing in December. But, that's not the ultimate goal is not that.
Would you guys, Taft, do you think that the Philadelphia Eagles, the way they distribute, the way they were on the field, could you sense a camaraderie in that team? Were they unified? Were they together? Did they love each other?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, more so than the New England Patriots, at least. I mean,
right.
The New England Patriots are kind of composed of a bunch of star players like Tom Brady, Danny Amendola, Brandon Cooks, but a lot of those players hadn't been playing with each other that long.
Right.
Philadelphia Eagles were kind of underrated at the beginning of the year. Mm-hmm. They didn't have high expectations, and kind of overcoming those goals and climbing over those walls has really got them to where they were.
Did either one of you guys see the movie Invincible?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, Papay.
So I kind of wish that they would have transpelled that movie a little bit more since the Eagles made the Super Bowl. I think everybody needs to watch that movie with Matthew McConaughey.
No, it was
Greg
Kinnear,
Mark Wahlberg.
Mark Wahlberg.
Greg Kinnear.
Yeah.
Remember that movie?
Yeah, that's awesome. A great movie.
Yeah, I knew Dick Vermeil.
Oh, wow.
We actually lived about 2 miles from each other in Philadelphia when they lost the Super Bowl to the Oakland Raiders. Dick Vermeil and his wife Carol used to shop in the same farmer's market in Devon, Pennsylvania. And he was not well received in Philadelphia at the time. He was the first coach to come in to reset the tone.
That's right.
And he did. And he came in from UCLA, and he was a real successful college coach. And he had a hard time transitionalizing, but that magic that he started, I mean, I was watching this year. I was so happy because once you're a fan, you never stop. Yeah. But I used to love Dick Vermeil and how he exuded so much confidence and spirit. And you remember,
very relational.
Yeah,
Doug
very
Peterson,
relational.
very relational.
Yes,
and not to say, some people show it differently. Like people say Nick Saban's not relational,
right?
But knowing some people that've been around it now, he grinds and they work 24/7. But he is more relational than people think.
Okay.
But I would definitely say, from the outside looking in, I hate to use this word fan, but definitely the love piece is what catapulted the Eagles this year.
Yeah.
The relational.
Yeah. Chris said something, Taft, that is so true in my business too, as it is in football. If you serve others, you'll serve yourself as a byproduct. But if you don't genuinely do it from the heart, guess what? you'll be exposed, you'll be found out. And when you serve others genuinely and you don't expect anything in return, that's when you actually can reap rewards. Do you agree?
No doubt. Reap harvest. There's no doubt about that. And our kids see that. They see that in the support they get. They see from a community. I mean, they see it. I make a big deal every year we get the shirts. This is a relationship. This is and success comes when you put others first. I mean, that's right in any field. Success comes when you put others first.
Yeah, give and not receive.
Yes, every day of your life, and you give without an expectation of receiving, right?
Yes, sir.
But that's what you teach. That's what you coach.
No doubt about it. We try, and when you talk about champions in the game of life, there's no doubt about it that when you see guys like I mentioned that come back, and even guys that maybe didn't play at NC State and Clemson. I see a Xavier Thompson over at the store that's working 2 jobs, was in the military, married with 3 kids. You see a Darian Jones who's doing the same thing. You see guys that have gone out and had success and understand the importance of that leadership that they learned and talk about it and come back. And even some guys that may have been knuckleheads come back and say, and we used to say it's not now, it's 10 years from now. And they'll come back and say, Coach, thank you for those lessons.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What about, Taft, what is the champion? Is it the champions in the game of life that you're talking about?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I mean, Pinecrest football's mission right now is champions in the game of life. So achieving that, give and not receive, and just the little things, the 7 C's that you mentioned earlier, can really help y'all achieve the champions in the game of life, which is your mission this year. So what do you really have to do to achieve that champions in the game of life?
Well, like we have a one-word theme this year. Every year we have a one-word theme, and this year it's unity. And okay, if you look at the definition of unity, the first thing that comes up is a group, and this typifies, all you gotta do is look in our country, a group of people that don't care who gets the credit. And the great thing about that locker room, a great thing about that meeting room is we have black, white, Latin American, Asian, Caucasian, rich, poor, fat, skinny, kind of muscular, bow-legged, you name it. We've got it all. And they come together for one common goal. And that's when something special happens, is when people don't care who gets the credit. I mean, you look at this year and, a bunch of no-name guys that really nobody was expecting anything of.
This past year.
Oh, yes. I mean, those guys wowed us, and we're convinced,
right,
bless you, that it was because of the culture of nobody cared who got the credit. I mean, our top 3 running backs were hurt in multiple games and just next man up. And that comes from guys being unselfish. We talk a lot about, there's a guy, Corey Patterson, that started, got hot, some other guys beat him out, and then he'd come in and block a little bit and do other things, and his hands were worn out from cheering when he wasn't in. And we live in a world that isn't quite like that. Now, when Mr. Sahadi and I were growing up, you might be thinking I should be in there, but no, you didn't dare say a word to your coaches about that.
Right.
And,
that's so true.
We are, as we raise champions in the game of life, we have some real simple ground rules. We love our parents. We're never going to talk to a parent about playing time. We're going to talk to Bill. Mr. and Mrs. Sahadi, which our parents would never have dreamed of that. I mean, we're going to talk to Bill because we're trying to create a confident man. Right. And that's just one of the little things about it. We have to fundraise. We have a lot of nice stuff. The guys have to fundraise. Everybody fundraises. Mm-hmm. Everybody. And everybody, there's simple ground rules to create consistency. And when guys see that, they believe. When they see there's consistency, when they see that everybody's treated equally. Not the same, because I've learned, like when we were growing up, they'd grab me. I mean, everybody, there was a certain way, but there's certain guys that, when you get to know a player, there's things that are going on that they need a little different boost than another player.
You guys both remind me of the movie with Gene Hackman, Hoosiers. No I in team.
That's right.
Did you love that movie, Taft?
Yes. Great basketball movie.
This guy, I bet you we could talk about the sports movies that you liked. I bet you we would probably share a lot of them. Doesn't matter when they were made. But Hoosiers is a great movie for anybody to see, to illustrate what Chris is talking about. No I in team. The members are stronger together than any individual.
That's right.
Well, both Invincible and Hoosiers are 2 great underdog stories that really show having confidence, and just a great work ethic can get you to your ultimate goal, whether playing in the NFL or winning a state championship in basketball.
That's right. We have to wind down, today. It's been a great conversation, but you know what, Taft, I'm going to let you wind down the show and sign off and thank Mr. Metzger, and I'm going to let you close it out.
All right, well, first of all, thank you, Mr. Bill, as you told me to call you earlier.
Yes, sir.
It's been a pleasure to be on the show with you. Chris Metzger, thank you for joining us. It was great talking about not only Pinecrest football mission, but just the mission in life and where you need to be. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for listening.
And this is All Things Moore County, and everybody have a great week.
And this is Taft Gantt signing off.
There you go.
All
We're going
right.
to hear more from you. Thank you.